Good morning. I'm Councillor Diane Donaldson and I'll be chairing this hearing of the Subcommittee B of Licensing and Public Protection Committee of Birmingham City Council. Before we start, can you all please mute your microphones for the moment in order to improve sound quality whilst I outline the procedure. Can you also please turn off your cameras with the exception of committee members unless you're the person speaking. This is to reduce the bandwidth. Committee members will have their cameras switched on throughout the hearing and the committee members, the councillors have their cameras on. Could everyone attending today's meeting please put their mobile phones on silent and ensure they are situated in a room or environment where it is free from distractions or any unnecessary noise emanating from radios, TVs, etc. Thank you for that. I'm speaking slowly and clearly so everyone can follow. It is vitally important, for what I hope are obvious reasons, that those attending the meeting and making representations are able to hear me and members of my subcommittee and officers. Any distractions brought to my attention could result in the meeting being suspended temporarily or to another date and time under the regulations for those types of meetings. I also confirm this is a public meeting and is therefore being live streamed on the City Council's website in order that the general public can view it. This meeting will be webcast for live or subsequent broadcast via the Council's meeting YouTube site. If we can put the details in the chat, please. And that members of the press public may record and take photographs except where there are confidential or exempt items. Members are requested they must declare all relevant pecuniary and non-pecuniary interests arising from any business to be discussed at this meeting. If a disclosable pecuniary interest is declared, a member must not speak or take part in that agenda item. Any declarations must be recorded in the minutes of the meeting. Apologies were submitted from Mike Sharp, so we have Councillor Leddy in his place. Can I welcome you to this hearing for an application to vary the licence in respect of Rodroy Coffee Lounge and Restaurant, 25 Smallbrook Queensway, Birmingham, B5 4HE. I'll begin with some introductions. My name is Councillor Diane Donaldson. I'm chairing this meeting of the Licensing Subcommittee. With me are other members of the subcommittee, Councillors Mike Leddy and Adam Hicks. Also present in the meeting are the following officers: Licensing Officer David Kennedy.
Sorry, Councillor, it's Bhupinder Nandra.
Yeah, sorry, Bhupinder Nandra. Committee Manager Katie Townsend.
Good morning, Chair.
And Committee Lawyer Joanne Swampillai.
Good morning, Chair.
Good morning, everyone. Could I first ask all parties to identify themselves, please? Firstly, the applicant. I'm not sure if the applicant is here. Kamal Zifti.
No, Chair.
He's not present today. And next, those making representations. West Midlands Police.
Yes, Mark Sollow, Licensing Officer, West Midlands Police. With me is PC Room from the City Centre team that covers Smallbrook Queensway. Thank you, Chair.
Good morning, both. And Eileen, Environmental Health.
Yes, Chair, my name's Martin Key. Unfortunately, Aileen Riley's away on leave and I'm covering for her today, so I'm representing Environmental Health as a responsible authority. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I ask if any persons making representation wishes to withdraw their representations at this stage of the hearing?
Mark Sollow for West Midlands Police, no, Chair.
Thank you.
Martin Key, Environmental Health. No, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. I assume that all parties have read and understand the Licensing Committee's procedural rules set out and the notice of today's hearing. Please note that given the nature of today's proceedings, I may at my discretion amend the procedural rules to reflect the fact that this meeting is taking place online, but wish to assure you that any such amendments will not impact on the party's right to a fair hearing. We'll be using the chat function in Microsoft Teams to communicate. One of the icons on your toolbar is a speech bubble. Click the speech bubble to go into chat. If you do not have access to the chat function for any reason, please use the raise a hand function to indicate you wish to speak. That button is usually fourth from the right on the toolbar. You can also, of course, indicate verbally that you wish to speak at the appropriate time. Can you all confirm that you have access to the chat facility by typing your name now? Officers, please type their job title as well.
That's everyone, Chair.
Thank you, Katie. Please keep this chat column open for the entire duration of the meeting in order that everyone can follow the messages being posted in the chat. If any participant has dialed in on audio telephone rather than Microsoft Teams, please speak now to confirm that you can hear and be heard. I don't think anyone's dialed in today. We can move on. With the exception of the subcommittee, members, please keep your camera off unless you are the person speaking. If there are any problems with bandwidth which cause difficulties with the sound, I may, in my discretion, ask everyone to turn their cameras off in order that the meeting can proceed with everyone able to hear and be heard. Does anyone wish to make any preliminary points at this stage? If so, please indicate that you wish to raise a point by typing speak into the chat function or using the raise a hand function now. Thank you. I'll now briefly outline the procedure which will be following at today's hearing. Firstly, the licensing officer Bhupinder Nandra will present the report. Then the applicant will be asked to present their case. We're asking if this could be kept to approximately 20 minutes. Then those making representations were invited to make their case. Again, approximately 20 minutes will be allowed for this part of the hearing. Can I ask all parties to speak as slowly and as clearly as they possibly can, because the officers are taking notes by hands for the minutes. And the meeting is also being live streamed on the City Council's website. If at any time it's somebody else's turn to speak, please mute your microphone and use the chat function to communicate if necessary. Please note that members of the subcommittee will be able to ask questions at any stage, but we'll try to do so at the conclusion of each presentation. Cross-examination by the applicant and those making representations will not be permitted unless the members consider it appropriate. Where questions are raised by members of the subcommittee or those present, they must Signify this using the chat facility set out on the right-hand side of the screen you are viewing the meeting on. The meeting manager will alert me if I do not notice messages in the chat. I will determine verbally or in the writing on the chat facility the order in which the questions are dealt with. So at any point in the meeting, if you wish to speak, please type the word speak into the chat function and the meeting manager will ensure that we come to you at the appropriate moment. If at any point you cannot hear or having problems with your internet connection, please use the chat facility to alert the meeting manager. The chair will then ask the person speaking to repeat what they have just said. It is therefore important that they use the chat function as soon as you are unable to hear the person speaking. It may well be that the problem is caused by people still having their microphones or cameras on, which creates interference. So I remind everyone to please mute your microphones and turn off your cameras when you're not the person speaking. Could I point out that occasionally it may be necessary for the subcommittee to take legal advice? At my discretion, I may ask all parties to wait in this meeting whilst members and the relevant officers withdraw to take legal advice using a separate meeting within Microsoft Teams. We will then return to this meeting and continue. Please note, if at any time the live stream being broadcast on the City Council's website fails, I will ask you to all mute your microphones and cameras and to stop speaking until the live stream is restored. If at any time this meeting goes into private session, the meeting manager will pause the live stream. Once the private part of the meeting is over, I will ask the meeting manager to confirm that the live stream has resumed before we continue. At the conclusion of the hearing, I will invite all parties to make a brief closing submission. Can I stress that this decision will be taken, that no decision will be taken until the evidence has been heard. At the decision-making stage, the members and the relevant officers will withdraw from the meeting in order to determine the decision. They will go into a separate Microsoft Teams meeting. In the event that members need to clarify any point, you will be telephoned by the meeting manager. The members will then make their decision. You'll be notified of the decision of the subcommittee within the statutory time limits. I hope that's reasonably straightforward. So with that, can I ask the licensing officer, Bhupendra, to present the report, please, as slowly and as clearly as you can, please.
Thank you, Chair. The applicant applied on the 8th of July 2021 to vary the premises licence for Rodrodge Coffee Lounge and Restaurant, 25 Small Brook Queensway, Birmingham, B5 4HE. The purpose of the report is to consider relevant representations that have been made in respect of an application to vary the premises licence, which seeks to add the sale of alcohol for consumption both on and off the premises to operate from 11 AM until 4 AM Monday to Sunday. The premises is to remain open to the public from 11 AM until 4 AM Monday to Sunday. A representation has been received from West Midlands Police as a responsible authority, which is attached at Appendix 1. A representation has been received from Environmental Health as a responsible authority, which is attached at Appendix 2. The application is attached at Appendix 3. The current premises licence is attached at Appendix 4, with the site location plans at Appendix 5. When carrying out its licensing functions, a licensing authority must have regard to Birmingham City Council Statement of Licensing Policy and the guidance issued by the Secretary of State under Section 182 of the Licensing Act 2003. The licensing authority is also required to take such steps as it considers appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives. The options available to the subcommittee today are to grant the variation application, to refuse the whole or part of the application, or to modify the conditions of the licence. Thank you, Chair.
Linda. Are there any questions from members?
No questions, thank you, Chair.
Okay. So the applicant presentation. I don't think there's anyone here. The applicant's not here and no one representing the applicant. So can we move on to West Midlands Police, please, to make their presentation?
Thank you, Chair. This application is made by Rodrodge Coffee Lounge and Restaurant, who trade 25 Smallbrook Queensway, Birmingham, B5 4HE. The premises currently has a late night refreshment licence, which concludes at 0400 hours each morning. West Midlands Police have objected to this application under the promotion of public safety, prevention of public nuisance and prevention of crime and disorder licensing objectives. Before submitting the objection, advice was sought from the neighbourhood policing team that covers that area. The neighbourhood sergeant and PC Room, who is with me here, a vastly experienced officer who's worked in the city centre for a number of years and has a detailed understanding of the area and the issues within it. Neither support the variation, and PC Room has provided a community impact statement detailing incidents and concerns within the nighttime economy and the area around Smallbrook Queensway as a whole throughout the day. This application seeks to allow the premise a licence to sell alcohol between 11 AM and 4 AM 7 days a week for both on and off sales. The application also seeks to use an outside area at the front of the premises for the same time frame. This area, I believe, is a public highway as it is a pavement and would need to be subject of a separate application for a pavement licence to use to trade. That pavement licence application has not been forthcoming. Premises is located on a dual carriageway between the top of Her Street and the Pagoda Island. Sits within a row of shops, all of which mainly trade, as this premises does, as food takeaways. It's opposite 2 hotels which have rooms facing the premises. The area is popular with customers who've been in the nighttime economy in the city centre, who stop off for food on their way home, and these people are usually already under the influence of alcohol. The application describes the premises as a coffee lounge and restaurant. The premises currently trades as a fast food takeaway, although it does have approximately 5 tables inside the venue. The plan of the premises was submitted with the application, and it was noted from the drawing supplied that there are no customer toilet facilities shown on the plan, and the plan is essentially the same as the plan is now. The application offered a number of premises operating conditions, all of which are extremely vague and as such would be non-enforceable and unmanageable. From the section 182 guidance, it says in relation to operating conditions that conditions that are appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives should emerge initially from the risk assessment carried out by the prospective licence holder, which they should carry out before making their application for a premises licence. This would be translated into steps recorded on the operating schedule, which also must set out the proposed hours. The courts have made it clear that it is particularly important that conditions which are imprecise or difficult for a licence holder to observe should be avoided. A meeting was arranged with the applicant to discuss the variation and the arrangements were to meet on the 13th of July 2021. Christopher Jones and Sergeant Lynn attended the location and were met by the applicant's representative, as the applicant was too busy to attend. Concerns were explained to him about the lack of toilet facilities for use by customers, the poor, vague, unmanageable and unenforceable conditions offered by the applicant, the use of the outside space until 0400 hours, and the offering of alcohol for sale until 0400 for both on and off sales, and how that would have a negative impact on the licensing objectives. The applicant's representative stated that there are no current toilet facilities for customers, and there are no plans for those to be put in if the licence would be granted. He did state that customers would be able to use the toilet in a shop further down the road, as they do now, which is also owned by the applicant. Sergeant Lynn attended that shop and asked the staff behind the counter if this was the case. Although there was a slight language barrier, they did say no, customers wouldn't be able to use the toilet, that was for staff only. The representative stated that the applicant would consider amending the hours of licence of activity, amending the operating conditions, and amending the times for use of the outside space. However, the applicant, despite attempts to contact him, has not answered any communications from West Midlands Police. West Midlands Police are concerned that by allowing the application, that would have a negative impact on the licensing objectives, in particular the prevention of crime and disorder, public safety and public nuisance. It is believed that if the premises was licensed to sell alcohol with its current trading model, calls to service would increase, and it would add alcohol-related crime and antisocial behaviour in the area. The concerns start with the application and the vague and unmanageable operating conditions submitted by the applicant, which calls into question as to whether they have actually risk assessed their operational plan prior to submitting the application, and if they did, whether they fully understand the increased risk of selling alcohol until 4 AM in what is essentially a hot food takeaway. Next point is the lack of toilet facilities for customers who are sitting in at the premises, either inside or outside in the proposed new area. That means that any customers who wish to go to the toilet must walk down the street and into a shop, if that is an available option, putting their safety at risk, as issues detailed in PC Room's statement. The more people have to drink, the more vulnerable they become, and people feel the need to go to the toilet, the more obviously they're there. How will queues be managed for this toilet facilities in a separate premises? Do customers have to wait outside, making them more vulnerable? Possibly with handbags or mobile phones in the street, possibly waiting for a considerable amount of time. That hasn't been documented, the arrangements for how that will be put into place. Obviously, the outside seating area is proposed to be open until 4 AM. Although situated on the dual carriageway, customers will be seated outside until that hour. They will be under the influence of alcohol possibly, and will cause noise and nuisance to residents of the hotel, which are situated opposite the premises. The premises is already a focal point for customers leaving the nighttime economy who want food. These customers are normally on the way home waiting for taxis. With the addition of outside seating and the availability of alcohol, this will encourage customers to stay in the area. And there is nothing in the application as how the premises intend to control this. Premises is proposing, obviously, to sell alcohol. The likelihood this will be in glasses or in bottles. Presumably, their plan is to sell these in glass bottles and glasses. These could become weapons for use by people if there are issues in that location. Obviously, there are a number of things that PC Room is going to expand upon, and if I can now get PC Room to present his evidence, I will then clarify what he's saying in relation to the particular application, if that's okay with you, Chair.
Yeah, that's fine, Mr. Swallow. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm Police Constable 6641 Room of the West Midlands Police. I've been a neighbourhood officer on the city centre for over 8 years. First out of Steelhouse Lane Police Station and currently out of Digbeth Police Station, both Birmingham City Centre. I've been asked to provide a statement in relation to Rod Rog takeaway at 25 Smallbrook Queensway, Birmingham City Centre, specifically their new application to sell alcohol both on and off the premises. At that location, I have personal first-hand experience in that time of policing the nighttime economy in Birmingham, along with the Smallbrook Queensway area, with its popular busy nightclub and other various late-night refreshment premises. Smallbrook Queensway, in my opinion, the West Midlands Police is already satirised with late-night refreshment outlets, of which Rod Rog is one of them. Smallbrook Queensway is a focal point for large groups of people and create crime. An interrogation of police systems have shown the following matters either directly attributable to Rod Rog or directly outside as a result of the premises being open for business at that time. I have filtered out, not included, any that do not make a reference to Rod Rog in the crime report or intelligence report. I'll quickly go through the, probably all got a copy of my statement. So the 5th of the 6th, 2001, over 100 hours, there's a crime report reference there, public order offence where alcohol consumption was an aggravating factor, sorry. The 29th of the 5th, 2001, that reference is a crime reference there. A malicious wounding where grievous bodily harm was inflicted. 25th of the 5th, 2021, another crime report dealing with Class A, which found to be cocaine. 25th of the 1st, 20, theft of customer's mobile phone inside the premises. We then go back to 2019, a drunken customer damaged a bin after climbing onto premises counter. I've included that one obviously because it's attributable to the premises, but shows that the premises are kind of reporting crime as well, where they are the victim. 2019 again, a fight inside the premises that resulted in a malicious wounding. 2019, a theft of a customer's iPhone from inside a handbag. 2019 as well, theft of a customer's handbag. And then we've got July 2019, 5th 2019, and September, 3 assaults, 3 separate occasions where alcohol was deemed to be a factor in relation to those assaults. And in August 2018, we have a robbery, which was crimed. Going back a little bit further, also in August, 1st of August 2018, dealing of drugs, Class B cannabis. 4th, 2018, theft of customer's mobile phone inside the premises. February 2018, theft of customer's mobile phone, also again inside the premises. And in February 2018, allegation of assault by staff. Intelligence reports is reports that members of the public, police staff can submit. So we have one in March 2020, drug dealing directly outside the premises. December 2019, drug dealing directly outside the premises. Again in December 2019, drug dealing directly outside the premises. 27th February 2019, drug dealing directly outside the premises. This intelligence report in December 2018, robbery nominal. That's someone who's known to the West Midlands Police, has been quite prolific in their robbery crimes, has stood directly outside the premises. So that's been in information report that someone who's well known in terms of robbery has stood directly outside that premises. March 2018, drug dealing, and February 2018, drug dealing as well. The above, crime reports, intelligence reports outline crime and issues at a premises where there is currently no sale by retail of alcohol, but where crime, disorder and alcohol-related crime are big factors. The police numbers post-COVID shutdowns and for the foreseeable future are drastically reduced, but violent and alcohol-related crime figures continue to rise, placing a massive strain on those smaller police numbers. It is envisaged that with Rod Rog obtaining sale of alcohol by retail as a local activity, that will fuel further crime. Patrons will leave venues nearby and go to a premises, in this case Rod Rog, where alcohol is available, and will continue to drink in that premises where currently no other premises along Smallbrook Queensway cater to that. Smallbrook Queensway is not only challenging, resource intensive, and an area that generates crime during the city's nighttime economy, it is also an area of the city that has crime during the week and during the daytime. Street drinking is an issue along Smallbrook Queensway that generates antisocial behaviour and alcohol-related crime. Drug dealing takes place during midweek, daylight hours, and the area is a robbery hotspot. On Friday 13th of August 2021, I accessed police systems in order to get an overview of what crime and issues have taken place just on Smallbrook Queensway within the same 3-year period as the bug crime reports and intelligence reports. There were 890 investigations where Smallbrook Queensway was a geographical feature, investigations that required police resources and time allocation for investigation, etc., the majority of which were for violent crime, alcohol-related crime, drug-related crime, sexual assaults, along with thefts. There were 67 intelligence reports ranging from begging, street drinking, antisocial behaviour and drug dealing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. So obviously the PC Room, as was stated, is a neighbourhood officer who works specifically in the city centre and works on nighttime economy. So he's very aware of the issues of nighttime economy in that area. Although it can't be said that incidents can be attributed to Rod Rog restaurant because it sells alcohol, because up to this point it hasn't. However, there are a number of incidents whereby alcohol has been a feature at that location. The point that West Midlands Police are making in relation to that is that by selling alcohol, that the likelihood is that these incidences will get more and potentially become more serious, because alcohol will be freely available until a very late time in the morning, 0400 hours, for people to go and have after they've already been in licensed premises. Obviously, the change of use gives different challenges. The selling of alcohol will give different challenges. West Midlands Police does not believe that the applicant has plans in place to meet these challenges. After midnight, exponentially, issues as a result of alcohol go up exponentially. However, the plans put in place by the applicant are confused and muddled. The applicant hasn't worked with the authorities, hasn't worked with the responsible authorities over the period of time to come up with a plan as to how he wishes to deal with the issues that his application puts forward. He's refused to engage. The conditions he has put forward are to have constant liaison with the police, to ensure there is a CCC system operating. He doesn't say how many days it will record for, whether it's overwritten, whether it will be made available on request to authorised officers. Will there be staff members available at the premises to operate it? He also offers ensuring there is a regular assessment in the vicinity of the premises. He doesn't say what that assessment is going to be of and how it will be recorded, to keep an incident of a record of crime and disorder incidents. He doesn't say that, or where it will be kept and how it will be updated, to have adequate staffing during busy periods, but he doesn't say what adequate staffing is, to ensure that he keeps queuing to a minimum, but he doesn't say how that will be done. to report any antisocial behaviour incidents. He doesn't say who he's going to report that to or how it will be reported. To have regular communications with the BID and work closely with the wardens. But he doesn't say how that communication will be made, whether it's by radio or by another means. In relation to public safety, he offers having health and safety practices implemented, but he doesn't say which health and safety practices and how those will be checked and recorded. To keep good management in place at all times. Staff to undergo regular training, but he doesn't say what that training should be in, i.e. are staff going to be trained in the Licensing Act 2003? Are they going to be trained in relation to underage sales? Is there going to be any refresher training offered? And how is that going to be recorded to check that it's actually been done? He also says he'll take regular assessments both inside and outside the premises, but he doesn't say what he's going to assess. He says in relation to public nuisance that he will stop the congregation of groups outside of the premises, but he doesn't say how he will stop those groups. And he also says he'll remove any litter from the premises and keep the premises litter free. He says he's not going to serve anyone who appears already intoxicated or under the influence. He's going to keep a log of instances for those who are turned away. But he doesn't say if his staff are going to be trained to be able to deal with that sort of situation and who will make the entries in relation to that and how it will be signed off. In relation to the protection of children, he says he will ensure identities are checked when alcohol is purchased to ensure patrons are of a legal age. But he again hasn't mentioned any training in relation to his staff as to how they will recognise this, where they will record it, and what actual scheme he will use to do this. He isn't saying Challenge 21 or Challenge 25, or what sort of identification, whether it be passports, photo driving licences, pass cards, or military passes. And he's not saying whether unaccompanied children will be allowed to enter the premises, and if so, until what time, as a premises that sells alcohol. The conditions that are offered, as you've just heard, are confused. They're not easily managed and can mean numerous things to numerous people. Thank you, Chair. PC Room and myself are available now for questions from any of yourselves.
You're muted, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Leddy. Would any members like to ask any questions?
No questions, thank you, Chair.
No questions, Chair.
Thank you, councillors. We'll now move on to the presentation from the Environmental Health, Martin Key.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try and keep it as brief as I can and try not to duplicate. Premises are located on the edge of our late night entertainment district around Hurst Street. It is a main road. It's a strip of premises with upstairs offices and a mix of restaurants, takeaways, convenience stores, largely in a pedestrianised area around the edge of the late night economy. It's currently used as a Turkish kebab shop, and we have had issues with residential nearby. So you've already heard there's the Holiday Inn opposite, Radisson Hotel opposite, but in addition to that, the upper floors of the Radisson Hotel and Cleveland and Clydesdale Towers, which are on the Queensway Island at the bottom, have significant amount of residential very close to this late night economy area. There are strip of premises have a number of premises licenses, largely for late night refreshment, and as you've heard, the one convenience store also operated by this applicant for off sales of alcohol. Premises has a license for a number of years as a takeaway, in fact since 2006, and you've heard currently has a late night refreshment license until 0400. We have a history of complaints within this area. A lot of them are generic about people, horns from taxis, as well as music escaped from some of the entertainment premises along this area, and it's very difficult to identify where the original noise has started because it's largely to do with people noise, and that's affected the residents in the towers and also in the Radisson, the upper floors of the Radisson residential areas. Premises has operated as a takeaway since 2006, and the objectives stated in the application are to sell patrons visiting the restaurant consumption of alcohol inside and outside, and provide 24 covers inside and 20 covers outside, effectively operating more like a restaurant. The application is still quoting as a takeaway or coffee shop, but the premises are a takeaway and is now assuming 44 seated areas with no toilet. 20 of these seats are going to be proposed to be on the footpath, and there's nothing else in the area of a similar type of use on that pedestrianised strip. Our primary concerns relate to two issues: one, the lack of a toilet, and secondly, the use of the external area for any use, particularly though for alcohol consumption. This will undoubtedly lead to adverse noise impacts on residents. Also, it will lead to congregation of people because it will be the only seated area and will become a hotspot for crime, antisocial behaviour disorder. The conditions officers, if you heard from the police, are totally ineffective. They largely mirror what was in the original permission and don't really address any of the concerns or issues. We did start some conversations similar to the police with the applicant, starting on the 10th of July, where we exchanged some emails, suggested some controls and concerns. The applicant was prepared to reduce the hours they were seeking for alcohol consumption, but wanted then for people to be able to bring their own alcohol and sit outside until 4 o'clock, and completely missed the point that our concern was significantly about noise externally. We then also raised the issue of the lack of a toilet, and at that point we've had no further correspondence with the applicant. Similar to the police, there has been no engagement. I will quickly clarify the situation in respect of toilets because it is quite complicated. Section 20 of the Local Government Miscellaneous Provisions Act 1976 provides for the local authorities to require toilets at premises which are called relevant premises. A relevant premises is defined as a betting office, a place of entertainment, or any premises for sale of food and drink for consumption on the premises. Also, it covers not just that use. So, for example, if the premises is largely a takeaway but provides a few seated areas, the regulations would still apply. There are no standards as such as to how many toilets. However, they do need to be at the premises. So, as the police suggested, walking down the road to another premises to use a toilet is not acceptable. The use of a public toilet is not acceptable. We do use a British standard which specifies numbers, and for these numbers of covers, we would, well, the British standard would suggest 2 male, 2 female toilets. Unfortunately, these regulations are quite old and predate a lot of the accessibility, so there would also need to be an accessible toilet. We would probably assume on a premises of this type, 1 male, 1 female toilet would be adequate, but 1 would need to be accessible. They would also have to provide wash hand basins, soap, and keep them clean. There isn't a lot of case law on this particular provision. However, there's been a recent High Court case in 2016, which was a challenge against some government advice. And the High Court held that actually providing that somebody is offering at any point the sale of a food or drink for consumption on the premises, there is a requirement to provide toilets. Our concern also covers the activities in terms of the outside space. We would have been seeking reduced hours externally. We would also have been seeking all the tables and chairs to be removed after 11 o'clock, because after those hours, any kind of outside furniture can become a weapon in case of any disorder. The premises is not really suitable for any external activity of this type. We would have significant concerns about on and off sales of alcohol, primarily because of the type of area it is and the type of premises in there. And finally, there is a complete lack of any conditions that the applicant has offered. We did suggest conditions to them and they've never responded. So on that basis, we would recommend refusal. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Martin. Are there any questions from members?
No, Chair.
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay. So we'll move on then. Finally, the applicant's not present, so cannot make a closing submission. So I just request a closing submission from West Midlands Police.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, the change of usage that the applicant is requesting offers different challenges to the challenges that they face now as a fast food takeaway. West Midlands Police believe that what they have included in their application does not meet these challenges. They've also refused to work with the responsible authorities, so it's been not possible to try and work with the applicant to update their arrangements to change the way they wish to work to make their business model meet the challenges that will come from it. They've offered conditions. Those are conditions which are muddled, confused, and would be difficult, if not impossible, to enforce. That is against the Section 182 guidance. They also don't meet the challenges set out that the application will generate. West Midlands Police believe that the application will have a detrimental effect on the licensing objectives. You've heard from PC Room, an expert in that particular area, the area of the nighttime economy and Small Brook Queensway. He has shown that there are a number of issues connected to alcohol at late nights in that particular area. This application, if granted, could only make those issues worse. Picture somebody coming out of a nightclub at 4 AM, going to Rodrodge, which would be licensed. They buy to take away kebab and chips and 2 bottles of lager. That means they will increase their alcohol intake, and they will have in their hands 2 ready-made weapons if there are issues that involve that person. That cannot be acceptable. Rodrodge is what it looks like. It is a fast food takeaway. It has no toilets. It is set up as a fast food takeaway. After this application, it would be a fast food takeaway, effectively, that sold alcohol. That cannot be positive for Birmingham's nighttime economy, and the lack of cooperation from the applicant has meant it's been impossible to try and update the plan that he's put forward to try and make it acceptable. I would ask councillors that you refuse the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Swallow. And can we have the closing submission from Martin Key, Environmental Health Officer, please?
Thank you, Chair. As you've heard, there's been no real engagement from the applicant in trying to resolve the issues. The legislation clearly requires the provision of a toilet. The drawings are poor. It's difficult to see where a toilet could be fitted in this location. It's not really clear what the applicant is offering in terms of conditions. We have significant concerns about the use of the external area after 2300 because largely of crime, disorder, noise, nuisance. The conditions of offered have been inadequate. There is a significant concern about the provision of a toilet, and we therefore recommend refusal on the grounds of public safety, nuisance and crime and disorder objectives of the Licensing Act. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now I will ask all parties to leave the Microsoft Teams meeting, and the members and the committee lawyer and the committee manager will go into the private session of the subcommittee while the subcommittee makes its decision. You'll be notified of the decision of the subcommittee before the end of statutory time limit. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Chair.